Stop the tape. Stop the tape right now. Dr. Phil's voice cut through the studio like a knife. In 20 years of television, he had never stopped mid-show. Never. The cameras froze. The audience gasped. In his trembling hand was a photograph, faded, yellowed, from 1983. And what he saw in that image would unravel a 40-year-old lie that destroyed 3 generations. What happened in the next 7 minutes would become the most watched moment in Dr. Phil history. It had started like any other Tuesday taping. Sarah Mitchell, 47, had come to the show to confront her mother, Barbara, about a family secret. "My mother has been lying to me my entire life," Sarah had written in her application. "And I need Dr. Phil to help me get the truth." The producers thought it was a standard family reconciliation case. They had no idea they were about to witness something unprecedented. Barbara, 71, sat in the guest chair looking frail but defiant. She had agreed to come on the show, but her body language screamed resistance. Arms crossed. Eyes averted. Jaw clenched. "Barbara," Dr. Phil began in his trademark direct style. "Your daughter says you've been keeping a secret from her for 47 years. What is she talking about?" "I don't know what she's talking about," Barbara replied, her voice shaking. "Sarah has always been dramatic." Sarah, sitting across from her mother, pulled out a manila envelope. "Mom, I found something. Last month, when I was cleaning out Grandma's attic after she passed." The studio was silent. No one knew that what was inside that envelope would change everything. Dr. Phil leaned forward. "What did you find, Sarah?" "A photograph," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "A photograph that explains why I never looked like anyone in my family. Why I always felt like I didn't belong." She handed the envelope to Dr. Phil. He opened it carefully, pulled out the photograph, and looked at it for what felt like an eternity. His face changed. The confident, unshakable Dr. Phil McGraw, the man who had counseled thousands, who had seen everything, suddenly looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. "Stop the tape," he said quietly. Then louder, "Stop the tape right now." The audience had never heard those words from him. The crew didn't know what to do. Dr. Phil stood up, still holding the photograph. He walked off the main stage area, toward the production booth, with the photo. The audience sat in stunned silence. Sarah started crying. Barbara's face had gone completely white. 30 seconds passed. Then a minute. The audience could hear muffled voices from backstage, Dr. Phil's voice, raised, talking to producers. "Get me a specialist. Now. I need someone from genetics, and I need the legal team on standby." When Dr. Phil returned to the stage 2 minutes later, his entire demeanor had changed. This was no longer a TV show. This was a moment of genuine human crisis, and he was handling it like a crisis. He sat down, but not in his usual chair. He pulled a stool directly in front of Barbara and sat close to her, closer than the camera setup normally allowed. "Barbara," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "I need you to look at this photograph. And I need you to tell me the truth. Not for the cameras. Not for the audience. For Sarah. She deserves the truth." He handed the photograph to Barbara. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. The photograph showed Barbara, much younger, standing next to a man who was not Sarah's father. And in Barbara's arms was a newborn baby. That was... Barbara couldn't form words. "That was you, 47 years ago, holding a baby," Dr. Phil said. "And the date on the back of this photo says July 15th, 1983. Sarah's birthday. But Barbara, the man in this photo died in Vietnam in 1972. Sarah was born in 1983. So how is he in this photograph with Sarah as a newborn?" Sarah gasped. "What are you saying?" Dr. Phil turned to Sarah, and his face showed genuine compassion. "Sarah, this isn't you in the photograph. The date is right. But the baby isn't you." The audience collectively held its breath. Some people in the front row had tears streaming down their faces. Barbara broke. Completely broke. 40 years of lies came pouring out in a flood of tears and confession. Her name was Emily. Barbara sobbed. My first baby. I gave birth to her in 1983. Her father died in the war. I was alone. I was 19. I couldn't keep her. I gave her up for adoption. Sarah's face showed every emotion at once: shock, confusion, hurt, betrayal. You had another baby? You gave away my sister? No, Barbara whispered. Not your sister. Dr. Phil closed his eyes. He had figured it out before Barbara said it. Sarah, Barbara said through her tears, Emily wasn't your sister. You were the second baby. 2 years later, I got pregnant again. Different father. And I kept you. I kept you because I couldn't lose another child. But every time I looked at you, I saw Emily. And I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell anyone. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah stood up. She walked toward her mother. For a moment, no one knew what she would do. And then she knelt down in front of Barbara and took her mother's hands. Mom, Sarah said, crying. Where is Emily now? Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Dr. Phil pulled out his phone. He had made a call during his backstage moment, a call that would change everything. Sarah, Barbara, Dr. Phil said. During the commercial break, I contacted our research team. We've been looking into adoption records. And Sarah, I need you to prepare yourself for what I'm about to tell you. He walked to the edge of the stage and gestured to someone off camera. A woman walked onto the stage. She was 49 years old. She had Barbara's eyes. She had Sarah's smile. This is Emily, Dr. Phil said. She's been looking for you for 20 years. The studio erupted. The audience was crying. The crew was crying. Even the cameras were shaking. Emily and Barbara stared at each other across the stage. 47 years of separation. 47 years of wondering. Barbara stood up slowly, her legs barely holding her. Emily took a tentative step forward. And then they ran to each other. The embrace that followed was primal. It was mother and daughter reuniting after nearly 5 decades. It was grief and relief and love and loss all compressed into one moment. Sarah stood to the side, watching, tears streaming down her face. And then Emily reached out her hand, and Sarah took it, and the 3 women held each other in the middle of the Dr. Phil stage while the world watched. Dr. Phil stepped back. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. This moment was theirs. But off camera, Dr. Phil had already made arrangements that would change all 3 of their lives. After the cameras stopped rolling, Dr. Phil took all 3 women to a private room backstage. He had brought in a family therapist, a genetic counselor, and a legal expert specializing in adoption reunification. Listen to me, Dr. Phil told them. What happened today was beautiful. But this is just the beginning. You 3 have a long road ahead. Reunification is complicated. There's going to be anger. There's going to be more tears. There's going to be hard conversations. He handed Emily a card. This is Dr. Marian Stevens. She specializes in adoption trauma. I've already arranged for you to have 6 months of therapy sessions, fully covered. All 3 of you, together and separately. He handed Barbara a card. This is a support group for birth mothers. You carried guilt for 47 years. That ends today. But healing doesn't happen overnight. And then he did something he rarely did. He hugged all 3 of them. You're going to be okay, he said. All 3 of you. But you have to commit to the work. You have to commit to the truth. No more secrets. No more lies. Can you do that? They nodded, still holding each other's hands. 3 months later, Dr. Phil received a letter. It was from Sarah. Inside was a new photograph, one taken just last week. Sarah, Barbara, and Emily standing together, smiling. Really smiling. Dr. Phil. The letter read, You gave us back what was stolen from us. Not just Emily. But the truth. And the truth, as painful as it was, set us free. We're a family now. A real family. Thank you for stopping the tape. Thank you for caring enough to make it real. Dr. Phil kept that letter in his desk drawer. He kept the original 1983 photograph too, the one that had started everything. Because that photograph represented something bigger than one family's secret. It represented the power of truth, the necessity of confronting the past, and the healing that comes when lies finally give way to love. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. In his office after that taping, Dr. Phil sat alone for a long time, staring at that old photograph. 20 years of television. Thousands of guests. Countless stories. But this one was different. This one reminded him why he did this work. Not for the ratings. Not for the fame. But for moments like these, when the truth, no matter how painful, becomes the pathway to healing. The photograph that had revealed a 40-year-old lie became the photograph that reunited a family. And Dr. Phil McGraw, who thought he had seen everything, learned that even after 2 decades on television, he could still be shocked by the power of love, the weight of truth, and the miracle of second chances. The photograph stayed in his drawer. A reminder that sometimes, the most powerful moments in life aren't scripted. They're real. They're raw. They're human. And sometimes, all it takes is the courage to stop the tape and say, "This matters more than the show." But the story didn't end there. What happened in the months that followed would prove that Dr. Phil's intervention had created something lasting. 6 months after that episode aired, Sarah called the Dr. Phil show. She wanted to give an update. And what she shared moved everyone on the production team to tears. "Emily and I talk every single day," Sarah told the producer. "She lives 3 states away, but we video call every morning. It's like we're making up for 47 years in 6 months." But more significantly, Barbara had finally found peace. The guilt that had eaten at her for nearly 5 decades was being processed in therapy. Dr. Marion Stevens, the therapist Dr. Phil had connected them with, reported that Barbara was finally learning to forgive herself. Barbara carried the weight of impossible choices, Dr. Stevens explained in a follow-up consultation. She was 19, alone, with a baby and no support system. Society in 1983 was very different. The shame she felt, the isolation, it was crushing. But through therapy, she's realizing that she did the best she could with what she had. And Emily, the daughter who had been searching for her birth mother for 2 decades, finally had answers. "I always knew I was adopted," Emily shared in a written statement. "But I didn't know why. I didn't know if my birth mother had wanted me. That question haunted me my entire life. When Dr. Phil brought us together, I finally understood. She didn't give me up because she didn't love me. She gave me up because she loved me and couldn't provide what I needed. That changes everything." Emily had been raised by loving adoptive parents who had passed away years earlier. She had always wondered about her biological family, but the adoption records had been sealed. It took Dr. Phil's research team just 4 hours to find what Emily had been searching for her entire adult life. The photograph that started it all now sits in 3 different homes. Sarah has it framed in her living room. Barbara keeps it on her nightstand. And Emily carries a copy in her wallet. "That photograph used to represent my deepest shame," Barbara said in a 6-month follow-up interview. "Now it represents the beginning of healing. It represents the moment the truth finally set us free." Dr. Phil's decision to stop the tape and prioritize the people over the production had ripple effects beyond just this one family. The episode became one of the most watched in the show's history. But more importantly, it inspired hundreds of people dealing with similar secrets to seek help. The show received over 2,000 emails in the weeks following the episode. Birth mothers who had given up children. Adoptees searching for biological families. Siblings separated by circumstances beyond their control. Dr. Phil's team created a dedicated resource page with information on adoption search services, family therapy, and support groups. "That episode reminded me why we do this," Dr. Phil later reflected in a staff meeting. It's not about the ratings or the drama. It's about real people dealing with real pain. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop pretending it's a show and treat it like the crisis it is. The photograph, faded yellowed, from 1983, had become more than just an image. It had become a symbol of redemption, reunion, and the healing power of truth. And in Dr. Phil's desk drawer, next to that original photograph, was Sarah's letter and the new family photo. A reminder that sometimes, the stories that start with the most pain end with the most hope. 1 year after the taping, all 3 women returned to the Dr. Phil stage. The audience gave them a standing ovation before they even sat down. Barbara looked different, lighter, younger somehow. The weight of decades of guilt had lifted from her shoulders. Sarah and Emily sat side by side, holding hands. They had matching bracelets, a gift they'd given each other on the first anniversary of their reunion. "Dr. Phil," Emily said, her voice strong and clear. "You gave me more than my birth mother. You gave me a sister. You gave me a family. And you taught me that the truth, no matter how painful, is always worth it." Barbara reached across and took Dr. Phil's hand. "You could have made this about the drama. You could have exploited our pain for ratings. But you didn't. You stopped the cameras and you made it about us. That's why we're here today. Whole. Healed. Together." Dr. Phil smiled, not his TV smile, but a genuine one. "That photograph changed all of our lives. Mine included."